Our prayer this evening is from Council Member Toby Gilley. Mr. Gilley.
Thank you, Mayor. Would you bow with me, please? Dear God, our most loving Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this wonderful day you've given us in this wonderful city in which we live. Father, as we make decisions for our community tonight, give us wisdom and guidance. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
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 Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council meeting. And this is February the 26th, 2009, and those of you listening to the pledge might have heard a very robust group of individuals saying the pledge, because tonight we have with us members and coaches and very important people from Oakland High School and the Oakland High School football team. And they have achieved a great accomplishment. And Vice Mayor, if you'll take the chair while I go down to the podium, I'd like to meet with our coaches and some other important members of the Oakland football team at the podium at this time. Coach McDaniel, would you get all your crowd together? I don't know. Is it? Coach McDaniel, step right up here. Thomas McDaniel, first year coach, right? Wins state championship, the largest division.
Yes, sir.
Blue Cross Bowl. Quite an accomplishment. Congratulations. Let's give him a round of applause. This is coach of the Oakland Patriots football team, the 2008 state champions of our Blue Cross Bowl, held here in Murfreesboro at MTSU. Head coach Thomas McDaniel came from Moore County. This is his first year. Took Oakland on a storybook ride, guys, from last year, 3 wins and 7 losses, to this year, 14 wins and 1 loss in 2008. Quite an accomplishment. That last victory was a victory over Franklin in the Blue Cross Bowl at Floyd Stadium at MTSU. And the team has 99 members, 9 assistant coaches. And raise your hand when I call your name if you would. Brad Cowan, Chris White, Chris isn't here, Matt Snow, Matt Gardner, Matt Kresge, Brian Linnell, Josh Harrison, Doug Nickerson, and Bill Spurlock. Bill's not
Principal.
Okay, he's our principal. Okay, well, Principal Spurlock, I will not be in your office in the morning, I hope, for this oversight. But we are really proud, and on behalf of our city council and our residents, we want to present this proclamation to you and to the Oakland's team. And I think we've gotten all of you on camera, but I want to make sure, why don't y'all all stand up, the members of the football team at this time. All right. And hopefully they will all sign with the Tennessee Titans within the next 4 to 5 years. All right, you can be seated. And then who else do we have with us, Coach?
We also have our cheerleading coach, Miss Kristen Franks, and all of our cheerleaders as well.
All right, Kristen and all the cheerleaders, please stand up. Congratulations. You got some other folks too? Parents?
We also have some parents as well, and we also have one of our assistant principals, Mr. Tim Roediger, is with us tonight also.
All right, Tim Roediger, who serves on the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Commission. We appreciate your service, Tim. And we have some parents and other family members here, too. Why don't y'all stand up and be recognized? Okay, now. All right, good. Thank you. And it would not be complete if I didn't at least recognize the only member of our council to graduate from Oakland High School, Ron Washington. Ron? Some of us went before at Central, and some have gone other places, Ron. But it is a tremendous honor, quite an accomplishment. We're very pleased and proud that you've decided to honor our city by working so hard during this year, and we want to give you this proclamation. Congratulations to you, Coach. Thank you. You have the microphone, if you'd like to say a few words.
I never turn down a chance to say something. I will just quickly, on behalf of Oakland High School and the administration and all the staff and obviously the football program, just thank Mayor Bragg and the City Council for this opportunity, this special occasion for us. It's an awesome achievement for these group of young men, and I've said it several times before, and I'll probably repeat it over and over. It's truly a blessing for us as coaches to be given guys like this to work with and to have so many different backgrounds and diversity, so many different relationships that have to be evolved and to come together for one common goal and do something like we did in such a short period of time. It's truly remarkable, and it gives people like us in education faith that when everybody's down on young people, there's a lot of great things that young people can do, and it shows how resilient they are and what a bright future our country still has when you've got young men and young women like this. So thank you very much.
Wow, and that was off the cuff, too. I think we know why you're a great football coach. Well done. We're going to take about a 5-minute recess, if we will, right now, just for a picture, and we'll be back. So if everyone will join us out in the rotunda. All right, welcome back. And again, we are certainly proud of the Oakland football team and their entire community for the way they have represented our Murfreesboro and Rutherford County and winning the Blue Cross football championship this year. And we really enjoyed having them with us tonight. And thank you, council members, for making that presentation of the proclamation. We also have with us tonight a Boy Scout, Justin Jones, from Troop 398. Justin, would you stand up? Congratulations, yes. Justin is working on his communications badge, and he is a scout with the St. Mark's Methodist Troop 398. So we're happy to have you here, too. Thanks for being with us. And also, I'd bring your attention to the fact that our State Senator Bill Ketron is with us tonight. And Senator Ketron, we welcome you anytime, and certainly we know you have quite a busy agenda for the year ahead of you, but we appreciate you being with us tonight also. All right, at this time, council members, you have your consent agenda before you. Item F under the consent agenda has been withdrawn. But other than that, I believe everything else is in order. If you've had an opportunity to look at the consent agenda now, it would be a good time to raise any questions. If you have none, I'll accept a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. You also have the minutes of the meetings held on January the 29th and February the 5th, both regular meetings before you. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions to those minutes as they have been submitted?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, a motion and second to approve the minutes. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland. Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time we'll consider for passage on third and final reading an ordinance to zone an area along North Thompson Lane to PCD, BPD, and GDO-2 district.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland. Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we will hear from Job Hastings and Associates regarding the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2008. Mr. Job is here with us, and I believe each one of you has the audit before you. So, Mr. Job, you have the floor. Thank you.
Mayor Bragg, members of the council, it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to say I'm also a proud graduate of Oakland High School. So
Oh, everybody's shining in the glory. All right.
you have your report. It's 180 pages long. It won't take me long to read through that. So go page by page.
Yes.
I'm just going to hit some of the highlights, of course. Just for the everyone's information, it will be available on the website, on the city's website, in its entirety. So if anybody's interested, they can certainly go out there and look at it. One thing, if anyone is interested to go out and find it, there is one section of the report that gives a good overview of the financial highlights of the city, and that can be found on pages 3 through 18. That's what's called the management discussion and analysis, which gives the city management's perspective on various issues and, as I mentioned, financial highlights of the city. That's a good summary. Once again, this year we do appreciate all the help and assistance of Melissa Wright and her department. They were excellent in helping us in completing this audit. As you might imagine, the city of this size, it takes a considerable amount of time to get through all the transactions we need to do to audit the city, and they provide excellent help. If you will notice there's a tab called Independent Auditor's Report, and that gives our opinion on the audit report of the city. And once again, we have an unqualified or a clean opinion on the city's financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2008. And once again, this year, or last year, actually, we submitted the report to the Government Finance Officers Association, which is a national organization for their certificate of achievement of excellence in financial reporting, and it was awarded that certificate for the 10th year, consecutive year. So that's something for the city to be proud of, and we certainly are proud of it ourselves. On page 19, behind the tab Government-Wide Financial Statements, is a statement of net assets, or the balance sheet of the entire city. This includes all the activities of the city, including the city schools, the government activities, police, fire, other departments of the city, water and sewer, electric. And you'll see there that as of June 30th, total assets of the city were $1.2 billion as of the end of the fiscal year. Total liabilities were $434 million, which gave a net asset total or excess of assets over liabilities of $807 million at that point. One thing that I would mention, this is the first year, you may have, I'm sure you've heard mention of a concept called post-employment benefit obligation. What this involves is health insurance primarily paid to retirees of the city after they have retired. Traditionally, retirement benefits are recognized as those employees are working. In other words, the expense is taken into account as that employee is working. This new concept is trying to bring health insurance benefits into line with the same type of treatment as retirement. In other words, we want to recognize that benefit that's going to be paid after retirement while those employees are working. It's been in the newspaper because a lot of cities and counties are having to recognize a very large liability for this coming benefit. And I'll just mention that the city's recognized liability as of June 30th was over $4.8 million that has been recognized on this balance sheet. So it's a significant liability, and it'll continue to grow over time as that liability is recognized. There's a description, in-depth description of that liability and how and its treatment in the footnotes, starting on page 59. We won't go into that, but that's included in the descriptions in the footnotes. Also, guide you to the general fund on page 34, which is behind the tab called Fund Financial Statements. I'll just point out that total expenditures for the general fund for the year were $48.8 million, and the budgeted expenditures were $50.5 million. So the city actually came in under budget by $1.7 million for the year, on expenditures. And starting, there's a tab called Statistical Section near the back. And this includes a lot of trend information for the past 10 years. It shows revenues and expenses over that time period. And it's a good place to look to see how the city has grown over that time, because you can really see it in those trends. There's also a lot of demographic information, largest taxpayers for the city, largest employers, and that type of information in that section, which may be of interest. And I think that hits some of the highlights. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Are the pension funds of the city included in that total asset value?
Yes, sir, they are. With the exception of the city schools pensions, which are actually held by the state. So, but the city's own and the electric department is in that number.
And they're itemized?
Yes, sir, they would be itemized in here. Actually, on page 125, which is behind the supplemental section tab,
And that's the bottom line net assets held in trust for pension benefits?
yes, it's a total of $84.5 million.
And that's the city's and the Murfreesboro Electric Department?
That's correct.
Water and sewer,
It includes water and sewer, yes.
but not the school?
Not the schools.
Okay. Other questions from the council? I realize it's a lot of information, but the public may wish to review this document on our city's website at murfreesborotn.gov. I think when you look at some of the early pages under the management discussion and analysis, You will find many of the activities of the city outlined there, and I think those are important to take a look at, and those are more in a text format as opposed into a numbers format, so I appreciate that being provided. I think you also can see in your introductory letter from the accounting, or from the city to the members of the mayor and council, you'll see other activities of each of the departments outlined, and I think that would be of some benefit to our residents and business owners and taxpayers. So I do appreciate those being included, and certainly once again to the city staff, Mr. Haley and Mr. Lyons and Ms. Wright, for all your diligent work. I'd like to pass along my thanks, and certainly on behalf of the council, for the work that you've done in providing this document to us. Certainly, I don't think there's another city in Tennessee that has had quite the extraordinary performance that you have. I may be prejudiced, I may be biased, but I'm very proud of you, and I appreciate the work that you do. And Mr. Job, you've done a very good job of outlining this for us briefly. I'm sure if the council members have other questions, that they can contact you. Certainly, if our residents have questions, they can contact us directly at any time.
Mayor Bragg, one of the probably the most important page that I always look at, and I encourage the public to do so also, is page 10, and it breaks down the net program cost to taxpayers. If they want to know how government operates, look at that page right there, you know, and it really tells you how government really operates. People always talk about, you know, I hear them say, you know, run government like we run a household. That's impossible, because we provide services that you have to provide, you know, and you just got to go out there and do it. But if you look at that page, it breaks down the revenue brought in by each department and the expense to run that department. And I don't see but two on that page that's making any money.
So we should thank Judge Sellers and Mr. Whitaker and the Codes Department. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, you may not be thanking them next year, but now for this
Put Mr. Whitaker on notice.
He's got to at least do what he did last year.
That's right. He's got to do what he did last year.
repeat.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Washington. Other comments from the council members or questions? You've got Mr. Job right here. If there are no other questions or comments at this time, do we need to accept this by motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and a second to accept this comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2008. We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Job. Please pass along our thanks to your staff for their work. This time we'll consider for approval a renewal of a certificate of compliance for Stephen A. Tambernini at McGregor's Wines and Liquors, 902 Memorial Boulevard.
Mayor, this is required by the state of Tennessee every 2 years, and he has met our requirements for us to send this on to the state.
All right, is there a motion that we accept this approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. A motion and a second?
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time pursuant to a resolution adopted by City Council on January the 29th, 2009, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning 1.32 acres along Rushwood Drive and South Church Street from RM16 to OG. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the February 8, 2009 issue of the local newspaper. Welcome, Ms. Ely.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bragg and council members. The subject property is located east of South Church Street and north of Rushwood Drive. The Liberty Free Methodist Church currently occupies the site. To the west is the Jefferson Square office condominium complex. The Bellwood Trace apartment complex is adjacent to the property along its eastern border and is zoned RM16. The properties to the south are zoned RS8 and are part of the W.A. Rushing single-family subdivision. Also to the south is the Bellwood Mobile Home Park, which is zoned RMO, Mobile Home District. The request is to rezone 1.32 acres of property from its current RM16 zone to OG, General Office District, to incorporate this property as Phase 4 of the Jefferson Office Condominium Complex. The applicant has stated that his intentions are to remove the current church structure on the site to redevelop the site as Phase 4 Jefferson Square. As presently zoned, offices are not permitted in the RM16 zone. Although the existing Jefferson Square complex is zoned CH, Highway Commercial District, the applicant is requesting for this property to be zoned OG because it will allow the anticipated users but restrict those uses that may be associated with the CH zone. The concept plan for this site shows 3 commercial buildings for a total of 15,519 square feet of building area, which will be separated into condominium units, which may be sold. The Planning Commission members voted to approve this rezoning request unanimously, and all 7 Planning Commissioners were present at the meeting. Mr. Wayne Belt, the applicant, is in the audience tonight and would be glad to answer any questions you may have, although he doesn't have a presentation prepared. The City Council has scheduled a public hearing to consider rezoning the 1.32 acres from RM16 to OG, and you should do so after this presentation. If you have any questions from myself or Mr. Adelot, we'll be glad to answer them for you.
Any questions for Ms. Ely before I open the public hearing?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor?
Ms. Ely, and I'm sure there would be, and there's probably a site plan, but as this property backs up to residential, I'm sure there would be a landscaping buffer or some sort of...
A buffer will be required. A Type A buffer is required between the OG and RM zone, and then a Type B buffer is required between the single-family zone and the OG zone. So you're right, that's going to be required as part of our ordinance. What you have in your packet is just a very small scanned image of the concept plan, and I understand if you have trouble reading it, but I included that in your package, and I also included a photograph that shows the site, which currently has the United Free Methodist Church. So those are 2 exhibits that you have.
Was the property, let's see, in front of this church, wasn't that residential that was tied to the church property at one time?
Yes.
It is. It's tied to the church property now. It's the parish house. That site, we're very adamant, and Planning Commission is very adamant, that if this site is rezoned and it does become part of the Jefferson Square office complex, it will not have access to Rushwood Drive. So currently you can get to the church from Rushwood Drive through that home, that single-family home, but we're not going to allow that. If it gets rezoned, it'll have to go through the existing access on South Church Street.
So those lots will stay residential along that street of Rushwood?
Yes, they will.
All right. Any other questions before I open the public hearing? If not, at this time, I'll open the public hearing, and anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning of 1.32 acres along Rushwood Drive at South Church Street, please step to the microphone. Is anyone here wishing to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we'll consider for passage on first reading an ordinance to rezone an area along Rushwood Drive and South Church Street to OG.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time pursuant to a resolution adopted by City Council on January 29, 2009, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider amending Chapter 25 1/4 signs, Section 25 1/4-20, 25 1/4-23, and 25 1/4-25, dealing with temporary flag signs. Notice of said public hearing was published in the February 8, 2009 issue of the local newspaper. Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Staff recommends changes to the sign ordinance specifically dealing with flag signs. Section 1 and 2 of the proposed amendments would remove the requirement for single-family and 1- and 2-family dwellings to have to get a permit to install a flag pole. That would not be, just for clarification though, that would not be for commercial or multifamily, just single-family, 1- and 2-family dwellings. Section 3 of these changes would allow an unlimited number of temporary flag signs to be erected at a temporary event, providing that temporary event has received the BZA approval for that event and does not exceed 7 consecutive days, nor does the flag signs exceed 24 square feet. This went to the Plan Commission for public hearing on February the 4th, was approved and recommended to council. I'm available for questions before or after the public hearing.
Any questions for Mr. Whitaker before we have the public hearing? If not, I'll open the public hearing at this time, and anyone wishing to speak for or against this amendment to our sign ordinance, please step to the microphone and give us your name and address. Anyone here wishing to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we'll consider for passage on third and final reading an ordinance amending Chapter 25 1/4 signs, Section 25 1/4-20, 25 1/4-23, and 25 1/4-25 dealing with temporary flag signs.
Move for its passage.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider recommendations of the Planning Commission to schedule public hearings to consider requests for annexation zoning LI north of Joe B. Jackson Parkway, zoning portion of Boxwood Plantation Plan Development, RS-15, south of Salem Pike, zoning corner of East Sevier Street and South Highland Avenue, RS-4, annex north of DeJarnett Lane and Manchester Pike, and amendments to the sign ordinance regarding flag signs and flag poles, and also a request to reduce width of drainage easement along rear of Lot 7, Kensington Square subdivision from 30 feet to 20 feet, with that portion of the easement abandoned and quitclaim back to the property owner, Mr. Adelite. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Bragg and members of the council. During this regular meeting on February 4th, the Murfreesboro Planning Commission considered and recommended approval of the following matters that will need to be scheduled for public hearings. And the first is the annexation request for approximately 24 acres located along Joe B. Jackson Parkway. The second is a zoning request for that same property to be zoned to light industrial simultaneous with its annexation. The third is a zoning request to remove a portion of land from the Boxwood Plantation PUD by rezoning approximately 20.28 acres south of Salem Pike from PUD to RS-15. The fourth is a zoning request for approximately .21 acres at the corner of East Sevier Street and South Highland to be rezoned from RM-16 to RS-4. The fifth item is an annexation request for approximately 35.24 acres north of DeJarnett Lane, but that's Rutherford County Schools is the applicant for a school site. And the next item is an annexation request for approximately 91 acres along Manchester Highway, also for a school site to be annexed. The last item, the agenda is caught up with my letter, and we've already had a public hearing and passed on third and final reading the item number G. The rest of the items need to be scheduled for public hearings.
All right, Ms. McGannon.
Mayor, I would suggest April 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have April 2nd.
It's going to be in the country, Mayor.
Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye.
Additionally, the Planning Commission considered and approved a request to reduce the width of a drainage easement along the rear of Lot 7 of the Kensington Square subdivision from 30 feet to 20 feet to allow an expansion of an existing commercial building on that lot. This easement was dedicated with the development of the commercial subdivision, and since construction of the structures on the lot and in the subdivision It has been determined that there is no longer any reason to keep a 30-foot wide easement and that a 20-foot wide easement will be sufficient for city purposes. The staff recommends council approve this request to abandon this portion of the drainage easement and quitclaim it back to the owner of the property. No public hearing will be necessary, and it has been recommended for approval by the Plan Commission after it studied the matter.
Give me some idea where that is.
Mayor, on the in the materials, there's a little map that shows a cul-de-sac. This actually backs up to the property adjacent to the Black Fox Elementary School, but this is a cul-de-sac that comes off of Manchester Highway called Kensington Square Court. You may be familiar with it. It's behind the Publix grocery store. It runs roughly parallel with Rutherford Boulevard and then backs up almost to a cell tower in that area.
Thank you. And as the cell tower is not located here, it doesn't show it.
It's not shown on here, but it's actually just across the property line on the, and I can almost read this if I try hard, on lot 136, right behind it.
Straight up was the building encroaching over the easement?
Actually, several years ago, a corner of the building was built, and they got a release for that corner at that time. That would be back in the late 90s, and they were allowed to build with that encroachment. That was properly approved also. Now they're wanting to build an addition to the building to add some processes so that they can expand their business operation. It's a good operation over there, and we believe it's a good idea to allow for this addition.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adelot. This time we'll consider recommendations of the Traffic Director to approve an agreement with the Tennessee Department of Transportation and a memorandum of understanding with Middle Tennessee State University for Middle Tennessee Boulevard Improvement Project, Main Street to Greenland Drive. Welcome, Mr. Richardson.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I do have those two items for you this evening for your consideration, both dealing with the same subject, being the Middle Tennessee Boulevard Improvement Project. This is the section from Maine to Greenland, which is our last section, which is on our thoroughfare plan, which would go from Greenland Drive all the way to State Route 99. This would complete that arterial project, making it a 4- and 5-lane roadway all the way through. The city and MTSU have coordinated efforts over the last several years to reconstruct this section of roadway. If you would remember, back in the early 2000s, the city had moved forward to reconstruct the road as just a basic transportation facility with 5 lanes. In discussing this with MTSU, they wanted to modify the project to some degree to be more in line with what they envisioned the gateway and the perimeter of their campus to be. Also, this is more consistent with some of our past project changes, whereas the section of Middle Tennessee Boulevard between Mercury and Main Street, we put in the medians and the landscaping and some underground utilities, so to some degree this would be an extension of that. The project also includes the landscape medians, sidewalks, and the continuation of the bike lanes, which would again give us bike lanes from MTSU all the way to State Route 99. That was included in the entirety of that arterial stretch. We will also be extending the underground fiber optics to pick up the interconnection of the signalization, the addition of a couple of CCTV cameras to be added to our system. Also, this would incorporate some, I guess, non-traditional highway-related components such as landscape and intersection pedestrian plazas, seat walls, and other things that would more aesthetically integrate the surrounding environment land use with vehicular, bike, pedestrian-oriented type traffic components. The project, I do have some funding sheets throughout both the contract with the Department of Transportation and MTSU. You would note it's predominantly being funded with the federal funds with both the City of Murfreesboro and MTSU providing some of the required matching funds. Since the city is required to be the contractual recipients of these federal transportation funds administered through TDOT, they will be made available in various phases of the project. We bring forward this evening tonight both the MOU and the Contract Department of Transportation to help facilitate the understandings between the various parties involved in this, being the Department of Transportation, MTSU, and the City of Murfreesboro. First of all, you have for you an agreement with the Department of Transportation that provides for the funding for the project that would give us the ability to move forward with the engineering phase of this project and subsequent phases as well. And if we take those in order, I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have relative to that contract.
Any questions for Mr. Richardson?
Looks like you've done a good job, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you.
I like your ratios of city cost versus total cost. It's pretty good.
We try to maximize our funds where we can.
With that said, Mayor, if there's no other comment, I move for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider recommendations of the city engineer. Oh, Mr. Richardson.
We do have a second item on that, and that would be the memorandum of understanding between the City of Murfreesboro and MTSU.
You tried to warn me, and I apologize. I overlooked that. Thank you.
That's okay. We've been working with MTSU for about a year trying to work out the details of this and the interaction between us and them relative to the department project. So we have brought that before you this evening with an agreement between us and MTSU, and would additionally like y'all's approval of this agreement.
All right, questions on this memorandum?
No questions, Mayor. Move for approval.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. At this time, we'll consider recommendations of the city engineer regarding a geotechnical study for proposed improvements to Manny Avenue and the North Spring Street improvements. Welcome, Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, Mayor Bragg, members of the City Council. Have for you tonight, as you mentioned, two items, the first of which is the geotechnical study for proposed improvements to Manny Avenue. Our consultant, Huddleston Steel, is completing the preliminary engineering for Phase 1 of the Manny Avenue improvements, which this phase will actually extend from Broad Street to College Street. As part of the plan preparation, Huddleston Steel has requested information regarding the existing pavement thickness, subsurface conditions, which includes the depth to bedrock. Accordingly, we've requested and received a proposal from a geotechnical for a geotechnical study along the proposed route from Terracon Consultants from Nashville. A copy of the proposal has been attached for your review. The study will include four soil test borings at locations provided by Huddleston Steel, include sampling in the soil test borings, and also perform laboratory classification testing on a select number of samples. Upon completion of the study, a report detailing the findings and laboratory work will be provided to the city and Huddleston Steel. This will allow Huddleston Steel to complete their preliminary plans. At that time, upon completion of their preliminary plans, we expect to be able to hold a public meeting with the Planning Commission, public hearing, where we're able to, I guess, for the first time, be able to show these plans to the public, and would welcome their input on them. We recommend approval of this proposal, subject to the review and approval of the agreement for services by the city attorney. We recommend payment of the proposed lump sum of $5,200 from the TML loan from this project. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Griffith? How long do you anticipate this taking?
I believe the study itself will take about a month to do the field work and the lab testing and get a report back. And I expect that Huddleston Steel will be able to incorporate the findings in, take about another month. So I would expect to be going to a public hearing on this within probably 2 to 3 months.
All right. Any other questions on this proposed payment for a geotechnical study?
With no questions, I move it be approved.
Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye.
Second item I have tonight, Mayor, is the North Spring Street improvements. 8 bids were received on February 5th for improvements to North Spring Street from West Loki Avenue to East McKnight Drive. 7 bids were open and read aloud with amounts ranging from $797,178.62 to a high bid of $1,115,324.16. I might add that one bid was not open due to the company lacking current information on the outside of their bid package. The low bid was submitted by Rollins Excavation Company of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. The roadway portion of the bid was $414,448.62, and the sanitary sewer and water line subtotal was $382,730. The roadway portion of this project will be funded through the community development funds, and the sanitary sewer and water line portion will be funded by the Water and Sewer Department. I appreciate Mr. Callow being here and his support of this project and the funding for this project. A copy of the bid tabulation by our consultant, SEC, along with the letter of recommendation is enclosed for your review. We recommend award of the contract to Rollins Excavation, subject to approval of the Water and Sewer Board. Me or Mr. Callow, either one, would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Hearing no questions, Mayor, I move that we approve the recommendation.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Griffith. At this time, we'll consider for adoption a resolution expressing the official intent to reimburse for certain expenditures incurred in connection with the Manson Pike, Gresham Lane, and Fortress Boulevard Road projects.
Mayor Bragg, members of the council, this resolution is in the format you are used to seeing, indicating that we are incurring and expecting to incur certain expenses for which we intend to repay ourselves from future borrowings. It's in the amount of $13.5 million for the road projects that you've previously approved.
All right, is there a motion on this resolution?
Move for adoption.
Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Any beer permit applications?
Yes, sir, we have 2 tonight. One is a convenience store at 105 River Rock Boulevard. It is a name change only. And the other is a convenience store at 1945 Northwest Broad Street. It is an ownership change, and they have both met all of the city's requirements.
All right, is there a motion that we accept these applications?
So moved. Second.
All right, a motion, second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. This time you have a revised list of the statements to be paid. If there are any questions regarding the listing or the amounts, now would be a good time to bring those up. And if not, I'll entertain a motion that we pay the bills.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. All right, at this time, we'll consider any other business to come before the council. And I do have a recommendation for our Board of Electrical Examiners. You have before you two candidates, Mr. Harold Buddy Follis and Stan Harvey, who both would be my recommendation to fill vacant positions on our Board of Electrical Examiners.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Mr. Callow?
Thank you, Mayor Bragg and council members. I have two items. These would ordinarily come up on the consent agenda, but we didn't know about them on Monday when we were making up our list. First item, reallocation of funds for We Care Daycare. Ms. Katie Wilson, the chairwoman of the We Care Daycare Center Board of Directors, made us aware several weeks ago of a couple of emergency needs at the We Care facility on South Hancock Street. On behalf of her board, she's requested a grant of $3,192 to cover the cost of replacing their heat pump, replacing some floor coverings in the children's restroom, and purchasing some pest control services. The labor required for replacing the HVAC system is going to be donated by the MTSU Engineering Department. The project does qualify for Community Development Block Grant funding as a facility for children. And to fund this project, and we do recommend funding, we need your approval to reallocate money within our current budget as follows. From home rehab projects, $3,912, to public facilities and improvements, $3,912.
All right, is there a question on this recommendation to reallocate these monies? Then is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, you have a motion, second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye.
The second item we bring to you concerns a down payment assistance project. A home buyer for the reference property on Norman Avenue is being assisted with a first mortgage loan under the guidelines established by the Affordable Housing Assistance Program. Based on the information furnished to the city by the applicant and the mortgage lender, the home buyer does qualify for assistance. Disbursement of funds will be subject to final approval by the first mortgage lender and the applicant meeting all criteria at the time of closing as required by the Affordable Housing Assistance Program. The property location is listed below on Norman Avenue, as I said. The sales price is $68,000, and we're asking to be able to participate up to $10,000 on this project.
Are there questions on this participation?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. McFarland.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye.
Also, on the second page of my letter to you, we've had quite a few questions about the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. That's known in some places as the Recovery Act, some places as the stimulus. We were informed yesterday that the Community Development Department will be receiving $169,316 in additional funding as a CDBG entitlement. We did not know until late today. We still don't know all the details, but we've talked to our National Community Development Association in Washington late this afternoon. They've told us to expect the machinery to be in place for this money by mid-March. We were also informed that there's an allocation to the state of Tennessee of $13,467,000 for emergency shelter grant, the homeless prevention program. We get emergency shelter grant money through THDA, the Tennessee Housing Development Agency, instead of direct allocation. So we're hoping that they will apply their normal formula, and we'll be getting some funding through that.
Thank you for the information, Mr. Callow.
Any other questions?
Questions? Thank you,
sir.
Anything else to come before the council at this time? If not, you are adjourned. Thank you.